Hello. So in this video, I want to talk about the education of Miranda in Shakespeare's play The Tempest, because I've been thinking about this a lot lately. In The Tempest, Prospero and Miranda have been sent forth from Milan. Prospero's rule as duke has been overthrown by his brother, and they get set adrift. They end up on this island, and one of the things that Prospero says to Miranda is that, "Here have I, thy schoolmaster, made thee more profit than other princes can, that have more time for vainer hours, and tutors not so careful." We know, based on what Prospero says about himself and his rule in Milan, that he did not really do his job as duke, that he was devoted to and focused on the liberal arts, which in this case seems to actually mean learning magic. But it's not clear what he's taught Miranda, because she doesn't seem to have any magical abilities. It's not even necessarily clear to me that she fully knows or understands the extent of her father's powers. I mean, yes, she sees magical stuff happen, like when Prospero commands Ariel to put on the banquet performance with Juno and Isis, etc., etc. But this is also the only life that she's ever known since she was 3 years old, so it's not clear that she thinks that's unusual. I mean, and I don't want to, infantilize her or make her seem dumb here. She has been socialized in a system with one other adult other than her father. I guess Caliban counts as an adult. It's not 100% clear what Caliban's age is. But we never see Miranda and Ariel interact, other than when Ariel puts on the banquet for them. And then all that they are seeing is these spirits doing stuff. And if that's a normal occurrence on the island, so Miranda is 15, which we know because Prospero says that they were thrust forth from Milan, that she was not out 3 years old when they were thrust from Milan, and that was 12 years ago. So she's 15. If 12 of her 15 years have been on this island where magic stuff is occurring, and her dad's just like, yep, that's normal, she's probably going to think that's normal. That's not a critique of Miranda. That's an observation about childhood development and the ways in which socialization happens, how we come to see as normal whatever it is that happens to us normally in our lives. But it's not clear that Miranda can do any magic. It's not clear that she can command any spirits. Again, other than Caliban and her dad, she doesn't seem to interact with anybody until the other Italian nobles arrive, particularly Ferdinand. So we could assume that he has taught her magic and that just doesn't show up in the play, but I don't see much good reason to make that assumption. I mean, so she is at least aware that he commands magic, because one of her first lines is, "Oh, my dear father, if by your art you've commanded this storm." So she clearly knows that he has power. Whether or not she knows that that is unusual remains an open question. But she does not seem to have power. It doesn't seem, based on the fact that she beseeches her father to stop the tempest that opens the play, it doesn't seem that she has any real power to affect the outcomes of things in the world. So what else does she know? She knows how to play chess. We learn that because there's a scene in which Ferdinand and Miranda are playing at chess. Is she good at chess? We don't know. I mean, the dialogue starts with Miranda saying, "Sweet Lord, you play me false." Ferdinand replies, "No, my dearest love, I would not for the world." Miranda says, "Yes, for a score of kingdoms you should wrangle, and I would call it fair play." That's all we get about this game. She might assume that he's cheating because he's beating her and she's really good at chess, but that requires him to be really good at chess too. Now, he's an Italian noble in the medieval period, early modern period. He would know how to play chess. That's totally fine. But Miranda also would know how to play chess if they had stayed in Milan. That is probably a thing that she would have been taught, especially since Prospero does theoretically believe that his daughter should be educated. What else does she know? The play doesn't really give us any textual evidence that she knows much of anything. I mean, she tells Caliban earlier on that she had participated in teaching him to talk. We also know that Prospero claims that he taught Caliban to talk. It wouldn't necessarily be surprising to me if the child Miranda and the whatever age he is, maybe he's an adult, we don't know, maybe he's a similar age to Miranda. We have no textual clues for the age of Caliban. But it wouldn't be, but he was clearly not an Italian speaker when they arrived. Now, he may have spoken whatever language his mother Sycorax had spoken, possibly Arabic. I mean, she was from Algiers, according to the play, so he may have spoken Arabic. She may have spoken a different language, though, because both Prospero and Miranda say that he didn't know how to talk, and he gabbled like a thing most brutish, I think is the line. And considering that they had just been, well, actually they hadn't been. Maybe they hadn't been to Algeria. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Caliban may have spoken Arabic or some other North African language, whatever it is. It doesn't make a difference. The point that I want to make is it would not be entirely unusual to have someone like Miranda, a child, in the midst of learning foundational education, language, etc., sitting in a classroom alongside someone like Caliban, who, if we imagine him to be an adult, is acquiring a foundational education that he never got in childhood, whatever it is. She may have taught him to speak in the sense that they learned it together and they were study buddies or whatever it is. We don't know. We don't have that much information. Other than that, it isn't clear that Prospero has really taught Miranda anything. He claims that he has, but she never really demonstrates any sort of significant knowledge. She never demonstrates an understanding of the world. She never talks philosophy or theology or political science, mathematics, sociology. She never talks about anything that would indicate that she's educated. Now, that becomes really interesting when you contrast this with the Star Trek original series episode Requiem for Methuselah, which is a Tempest adaptation, in which Flint, who's the Prospero figure, he's an immortal who has been a great philosopher, artist, musician, political leader, military leader, etc., and he's accumulated massive amounts of knowledge, as all of these famous people throughout history. Flint has secreted himself on this distant planet, and he's built himself a series of androids, trying to create the right android. And the current version is one called Reyna. When the Enterprise crew arrives on Flint's planet, Holberg Gene 917-G, Reyna immediately goes over to Spock and is like, "You're a Vulcan. I'd like to talk about advanced physics with you." And Spock's like, "That sounds great. Totally normal request. I'm not at all weirded out by the fact that you, a random woman on a random planet, want to talk about advanced physics and shit." So, Reyna clearly has massive amounts of scientific, cultural, political, sociological knowledge, etc., etc. She's massively, massively smart. Partially that's because she's a computer. Her brain is a computer. But partially that's because Flint is massively, massively smart. And he teaches her these things. I'm assuming he taught her as opposed to just sort of programming that stuff in there, because he seems like the kind of guy who's down for a challenge. And so giving somebody a massive, comprehensive education in every subject imaginable seems like the kind of thing that would appeal to him. But whereas Reyna clearly has this incredible depth and breadth of knowledge, it's not clear that Miranda does at all. Other than speaking and playing chess and apparently losing at it to Ferdinand, I don't know that she can do anything. I don't know that she knows anything. Play doesn't give us any good reason to think that, apart from Prospero saying, "I have made thee better prophet than other princes can in terms of your education." And I tend to not believe Prospero when he says stuff, especially stuff he has a vested interest in possibly lying about. So, for me, I'm not sold on that. I'm not persuaded by Prospero's assertion here. Now, this is also an interesting thing, this question of how educated is Miranda, because this is an early modern play. The Tempest premiered probably around 1611. Women did not get an education in the way that we think of an education now. So she may be more educated than the average Jacobean woman would be, in the sense that the average Jacobean woman would learn things like sewing. If you were upper class, she's a child of a former duke, so that's worth noting. So things like decorative sewing, really more than like I'm repairing garments, things like needlepoint or I don't know, cross stitch, whatever the Jacobean equivalent was. They would learn poetry, they would learn music, they would learn conversation skills, things like this. But they wouldn't learn a lot of practical skills necessarily. Interestingly enough, the Quakers, who I think were already around in 1611, though I don't know when Quakerism was founded, but definitely by the time of the English Civil War in the 1640s, Quakers were around. The Quakers actually believed in comprehensive education for women. So, I mean, I think that idea was not entirely unknown by the time Shakespeare wrote The Tempest. But again, Shakespeare is not a Quaker, as far as we know. I mean, we don't know for sure what his religious proclivities were. There are different theories, different ideas about it. But he wasn't a Quaker. I don't think anybody has made that argument. So Shakespeare likely did not believe in comprehensive education for women because it was not a thing that people tended to believe in at this point in time. So yeah, the education of Miranda is a weird point in the play because to me, it doesn't seem like is a real education, but it's also not clear what in 1611 a real education for a woman in Miranda's position would be.